Hello and welcome to Try It. It's part of the Entrepreneurship and Enterprise program here at GBS. My name is Annabelle and I'm the Senior Entrepreneurship Officer, and I support students to start and grow businesses here at GBS. So today's workshop is all about legal foundations for business success with Kelly Thornton, who is a lecturer here at GBS as well. And I will now hand over to Kelly. Stop sharing my screen. And please take it away, Kelly.
No problem. Thank you, Annabelle. So I'm just going to share my slides, check you can see those okay.
Brilliant.
Fabulous. Okay, so yeah, as mentioned previously, my name's Kelly Thornton. I'm a lecturer at GBS. I predominantly lecture in London, but I cover all campuses when needed. And I've just prepared a short presentation to cover legal foundations for anyone who wants to start a business or anyone who's potentially looking to become an entrepreneur in future. Effectively, what I want to cover with you guys today is a 12-step plan, just so you have the key checklist for starting a business. Caveats at the start, it's by no means all the detail you'll need. It's really designed for entrepreneurs to just check off the key elements that they're going to have to do in order to start their operations as a business owner. But you can obviously find further details on each of the 12 points. So the first point usually is to identify market opportunities. So it's really important as someone who potentially wants to start a business that you know that there is demand for whatever it is you are going to be supplying, whether that's a product or a service, whether your business is going to be a business to business startup or a business to consumer or even consumer to consumer. Once you've identified that market opportunity by doing lots of market research, by working out if there is demand in that industry, and how you can fill that demand, most importantly, then you can really start to build a brand. So stage 2 is then to choose a name for your business and develop that brand identity. And then stage 3 is what we're going to focus on today, which is your legal structure and picking the right way of legally registering your business. That leads us nicely on to stage 4, which is the registration requirements, and then stage 5, which is your tax compliance requirements. And what you need to do in terms of tax will depend on what kind of business you're registering. After you've sorted out the legal requirements and tax compliance, you then move on to opening a business bank account, and there will be different options available from different high street banks, depending on the legal structure of the business you choose. And then that again leads into your insurance, which will depend on the size of the business and the legal structure that you've chosen at stage 4. Then we're on to stage 8. Stage 8 is your intellectual property protections. There's a whole area of law called intellectual property law, which covers how you protect your designs, your ideas, and anything that's unique about your business. And then stage 9 is getting funding. Funding, of course, which could come from yourself as an internal source of finance, your savings, any family and friends that are willing to invest in your startup. But there are also loans available, government grants and subsidies, and accelerator venture capitalists who specialize in launching startup businesses. Stage 10 is then building your website. Stage 11 is starting to market your product and service. And then stage 12 is really important, and that's realizing that your compliance requirements are ongoing. It's not as simple as making sure you're on the right side of the law when you start and then just going off on a free rein. It's making sure on an annual, if not quarterly basis, that you're complying with any new laws that are covered by your business. So we're not going to cover all 12 in detail today, but they're just a quick outline. There are some important things before we begin. First of all, there are different laws that apply in Scotland and Northern Ireland. So what we're going to cover today only covers startup businesses that operate solely in England and Wales. If you're expanding into Scotland and Northern Ireland, or starting in Scotland and Northern Ireland, or expanding to any other country in the world, then every country you expand into or start in will have new and different legal requirements. And specialist advice will be available for every single step of those 12 steps. The most important thing as an entrepreneur myself is making sure that you realize if you've got an idea, if you can dream it, you can definitely do it. So understanding that no one is too small to start a really, really successful business, and you don't know until you've tried. So to zoom into the types of businesses, there are three sort of legally recognised broad categories of business. And as business and tourism or accounting and finance students, most people watching this will already know this, but just to clarify, the smallest group are sole traders. And these are people that are basically a one-man band. They start their own business and they themselves as a human being and the business are the same thing. So they have unlimited liability. That means if their business owes money to anybody or is sued by anybody, the individual entrepreneur and the business are legally the same, and therefore they would have to use their own savings and their own assets to secure loans for the business or to pay off business debts. However, what is often misunderstood is that sole traders can still employ staff, but the staff salaries are paid for by the sole trading business account. And if the money runs out, it will still be the entrepreneur's sole responsibility to make sure their staff are paid on time. This is a very advantageous startup structure for a small business because it's very easy to do, it's very quick, it's very straightforward. So most very small businesses with 1 to 10 employees start as sole traders. The next stage up is a partnership. Again, all the partners have unlimited liability and they should be signing a partnership agreement between the partnership team, which will set out who has which role. And it's effectively good for businesses that involve expertise. So you see them quite frequently for solicitors, businesses or GPs or dentists, where you might have, for example, a group of solicitors who all specialise in different areas of law, signing a partnership agreement and becoming a partnership so that they can offer different types of legal advice to the public. And again, they have unlimited liability. It's quite easy and quick to set up, as opposed to the larger startups, which tend to be companies. So companies involve the issuing of shares either to private investors in the case of a private limited company or to the stock market in the case of a public limited company. There are a lot more stringent legal requirements under the Companies Act 2006, which sets out the whole process for registering companies. But very importantly, every shareholder has limited liability. That means they are not the same thing as the business legally. The business has separate legal corporate personality. In reality, that means if the company is sued for whatever reason or doesn't pay its debts, then the company is the entity being sued, not the shareholders as individual human beings. That gives them limited liability and makes it easier to scale up a business that has been registered as a company. So the larger businesses and quick growth industry businesses tend to register as private limited companies. And eventually, if very successful, they might move to the public limited format. In terms of registration and tax compliance, sole traders need to register in England with HMRC, and all they need is a self-assessment tax account. And that means every year they have to declare how much money their sole trading business has earned, how much of that income was profit, and then they pay tax on that profited amount. And partnerships the same. The only difference is they also need a partnership agreement, which needs to be given to HMRC to prove the existence of the partnership. However, companies need to register with Companies House. So like I said, under the Companies Act 2006, they have a much more stringent requirement. They need an Articles of Association and Memorandum of Understanding, Memorandum of Association, both of which are documents that need to be legally drafted that cover what the company is going to do, the industries they're going to operate in, who the members of the company are. And that also allows the company to have a set of internal rules for things like appointing directors and company secretaries. In order to actually register the company with Companies House, you need to have already appointed at least one director and at least one company secretary to get going. But after that, your Articles of Association can set out the rules for how your business is going to operate once it's up and running. Moving on to insurance and intellectual property, this is a very tricky area, and it's very much advised that you get specialist advice, but the type of insurance you'll need depends completely on the industry that you're hoping to enter. So intellectual property protections are there to stop other people or other businesses stealing or using your ideas without your consent. there are three types: patents, trademarks, and copyrights. But if we zoom in on the two that are more common for startups, patents are a form of intellectual property right that provides legal protections for inventions. So if what you're hoping to do is design a new product and launch a business to sell that product to the market for the first time, you need to patent that design, because it will grant you the exclusive right to make, use, and sell that invention for a limited period of time. And the main purpose is to encourage innovation by providing inventors with an incentive to disclose their inventions to the public in exchange for exclusive rights to exploit that invention. Trademarks are more related to signs and symbols related to your business or company. So any distinctive sign or symbol that's used to identify and distinguish the goods or service of one business from another. So things like names, logos, slogans, color palettes, sounds, and even products, shapes, and packaging, they can all be trademarked, again, to stop them being copied by other businesses or other individuals. In terms of funding, just to quickly highlight four main sources of funding. Again, students amongst you will know there are internal and external sources of finance, but outside, in terms of specialist external sources of finance for startups, there are lots of startup funds available from various different companies and charities who specialise in what's called accelerator funding, which is where they will set out key requirements for the types of startups that they want to fund, and they will provide money to accelerate the growth of that startup. There is the entire industry of venture capital, which is where experts will invest money in a startup in return for equity within that business. And although venture capital is a huge industry, there are venture capital firms that specialize just in startups. And there are even venture capital firms that specialize not only just in startups, but in startups in particular areas. So it might be, for example, startups northern cities or the Midlands, as opposed to the current concentration of growth within the southeast of England, or it might be based on industry. So quick growth industries like AI, big data, and quantum computing have lots of opportunities available within venture capital industry in terms of getting specialist funding. And then finally, we've got government grants and subsidies, which are available on a rolling basis. So it's worth keeping an eye on the government website, .gov.uk, in order to see press releases when new government grants and subsidies are released for different forms of startups in different industries. That allows the government to incentivize growth in certain new industries like, again, AI and big data, but also within companies that aim at creating social responsibility. So maybe companies or sole traders that are focusing on alleviating poverty, increasing access to education, and other charitable objectives. Once you've launched, what's really important is to keep up to date with your legal and regulatory requirements, which will change over time as new laws are passed, particularly flagging up at the moment the 2024 general election, which will undoubtedly, regardless of which party wins, will involve a new parliamentary term starting and new laws being passed. And that compliance requirement is ongoing. So as new laws are passed by Parliament and as regulations change, it's very important as a business owner that you seek specialist advice depending on what happens. And there are often lots of areas of law that you might not know as a non-lawyer. So things like data protection, use of various different software platforms, all of which it's important that you speak to lawyers and other specialists whose entire job it is to help entrepreneurs make sure they're compliant in those niche areas. For further information, I'd like to flag up Lowry and Dignam, who their company law textbook is the kind of broad, almost Bible of company law that goes through all the details of how to register a company under the Companies Act. And there are some really helpful tips for startup businesses in there. And if you are more specifically interested in intellectual property protections, Bentley's textbook from Oxford University Press is the kind of, again, the Bible of intellectual property law. And for more accessible information, HMRC provide tax guides every year that are updated at least annually, sometimes quarterly, that will introduce you step by step on how to register for a self-assessment tax account with HMRC. And as I've said to Annabelle, I'm happy to take any questions by email. My email is on the first slide, so you can contact me at kthornton@globalbanking.ac.uk, and I'm sure I will be back with the Entrepreneur Hub at some point to do some future events anyway, so I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. That was really informative, and I learned a lot as well.
No
I'm
problem.
also starting a business, so these things are really foundational to get in place. And like I said, the recording of this workshop will go up on the YouTube channel
Okay.
in the following days, and then I'll also circulate by email to the students that registered on this, and also to the wider students on the Entrepreneurship and Enterprise Program, along with your contact detail and your the resources, the links that you shared as well. But
Okay.
again, thank you. That was a
No
really
worries.
good
No problem at
workshop.
all. No
Thank you so
problem.
much for your
Thanks.
time.
No
All
problem.
right.
Thanks, Annabelle. Bye.
All right. Bye.